What if learning just 9 storytelling frameworks could be the reason your business adds 6 figures or more this year? Because the truth is, people don't buy products, they buy stories. And if your content isn't converting, chances are it's missing that emotional hook that makes people feel trust and take action. In this video, I'm breaking down the 9 powerful storytelling frameworks you can start using today to boost conversions, build deeper audience connection, and make more sales without using outdated tactics. I'm Soraya, a copywriter, email strategist, and content marketer, and I've worked with over 500 businesses behind the scenes and helped many of them go from 0 to 6 figures using storytelling that actually sells. And now I'm giving you the exact frameworks I've used again and again. And if you'd like to save these frameworks, I've prepared them as a free resource you can download in the link in the description box below. You can start putting them to use right after you finish watching the video. Before I got into online marketing, I started as a portrait and wedding photographer. And while I loved capturing beautiful images, what really lit me up was telling the stories behind them. I'd write blog posts for every couple, sharing the emotion, the energy, and the little moments that made their day special. That's where I was unknowingly sharpening my storytelling skills. Years later, when I transitioned into online marketing and left my corporate job in 2016 to pursue entrepreneurship full-time, storytelling became my secret weapon. That's where you might be right now, trying to grow your business, create more consistent revenue, and finally break out of the cycle of hustle without return. And here's what I've learned. Storytelling is the skill that can completely change the game for you. Not random storytelling, but intentional, strategic storytelling built on proven frameworks. When I started using these in both my own business and my client work, everything shifted. Sales came in, whether it was a $3 product or a high-ticket offer. The frameworks worked across the board. It gave me the confidence that if I could sell something small, I could scale to 6 figures and beyond, and I did. Most people overlook storytelling or do it poorly, but if you learn to do it well, you instantly stand out. The 9 storytelling frameworks I'm about to share with you are the same ones I've used to help clients grow, launch, and sell with ease. Here's what separates amateur communicators from pros. Amateurs overteach. They go straight into tactics. That triggers the logical part of the brain, which doesn't drive action. But the best communicators, they tell emotionally charged stories. Stories that get remembered and drive real decisions. In fact, when we hear a story, our brains don't just light up in one spot. They fire across multiple regions. The parts of the brain that process language, sure, but also the parts that handle emotion, memory, even sensory experience. That's why when someone tells a really good story, you don't just understand it, you feel it. There's something called neurocoupling. It basically means that when I tell you a story, your brain starts mirroring mine. If I'm talking about being nervous before a big launch, your brain starts firing in a similar way, almost like you're experiencing it too. And that's how connection is built. That's empathy in action. And then there's dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. When a story has tension, surprise, or an emotional payoff, your brain releases dopamine. That little hit actually helps you remember the story. It's why people forget facts, but they remember stories for years. So if you want your content to stick, don't just teach, but tell a story, because stories don't just inform, they transform. And so how do you tell a story that actually makes people feel something and want to buy? For the last decade, I've spent hundreds of hours studying the best communicators and read hundreds of books. And here's what all the best communicators and writers have in common. They tell memorable stories. What I found wasn't just charisma, it was a repeatable pattern, a structure that moves people not just emotionally, but into action. It's kind of like watching a movie so good, you forget you're in the theater. That's what powerful storytelling does. It pulls your audience into the scene until they're not just listening, but they're living it. So if you learn to practice the next frameworks and add them to all of your content, I guarantee you'll be turning more viewers into subscribers and more subscribers into customers. All right, enough talking. Now for the frameworks. Number one is the before after bridge. You'll want to use this framework for short form content, landing pages, and hooks. So the before is you want to show the problem and their current painful state. The after is you want to paint a picture of what life looks like after the problem is solved. And then the bridge is you want to introduce your product or your service or your idea as the bridge between the two. Here's an example of this framework. Before working with me, Sarah was burnt out. She was trying to post every day on Instagram to get clients. After setting up a simple content to lead system, she was getting more clients to join her program from one video a month. That shift from hustle to automation came from implementing the strategy I'm about to show you. Here's why this framework works. It's quick, it's persuasive, and it's super clear. So the before after bridge, you want to start showing your audience what life looks like before the transformation. Maybe they're struggling with something, they're stuck, they're overwhelmed, or just hitting a wall. Then you want to show them what's possible after the transformation, what their life or business can look like. Finally, you introduce your offer, your product, or your method as the solution, the bridge that gets them from point A to point B. This framework is simple, it's clear, and it works fast. It's perfect for short videos or opt-ins. Framework number two, it's the problem, agitate, solve, or solution, or also known as PAS. You want to use this one for sales copy, YouTube, and emails. Here's the structure. You want to start with the problem. You introduce a common pain point. Then you want to agitate. You dig deeper into the emotional frustration. Then you solve. You present your solution as the way out. Here's an example. You're creating content, but no one's converting. You spend hours on posts, but your calendar's still empty. And the worst part is that you're doubting whether this business will even work. I've been there, and what turned things around was building an email list and using a weekly newsletter to turn subscribers into high-ticket clients. Here's why the framework works. It builds tension that makes the resolution feel satisfying and necessary. So the problem, agitate, solve. You start with the problem, you call it out, you name the frustration they've been quietly carrying. Then you stir the pot, you dig deeper. You show the ripple effect of not solving that problem. And once the tension is high enough, you bring the solution, your product, your service, your content, and you land it like relief. This one is great when you want to create urgency and drive action. Real quick, if you want to take everything we've talked about today even further, be sure to grab my book, Email Marketing Millionaire. It shows you what to send, how to sell, and how to make email marketing your highest converting channel. Grab it in the description box below. Framework number 3 is the 4 P's, or picture, promise, proof, and push. Here's where you'll use it. Conversion-driven video scripts or emails. Here's the structure. Paint a vivid scenario of what your audience wants. The promise is you tell them what the result they'll get. The proof is you show examples, testimonials, and stats. The push is you encourage them to take action, or the CTA. Here's an example of that framework. Imagine waking to Stripe notifications instead of DMs asking for your rates. That's the reality when your offers are clear, your funnel is automated, and your content attracts the right people. One of my clients, Alice, hit her first 10K month doing exactly this, with less content, not more. So if you're ready to get results like that, let's map it out together. Here's why this framework works. It combines emotion, credibility, and urgency. So the picture, promise, proof, push framework It starts with a vivid mental image. It paints a scene that they want to be living. Then it makes a promise, the result they can expect if they follow your method or use your offer. Next, you back it up. You share a testimonial, a stat, or personal story that proves that it's real. Finally, you want to push. You invite them to take action while the desire is high. Framework number 4, the mountain. You want to use this one for personal storytelling or case studies. Here's the structure. You start with a goal, you encounter setbacks, then you overcome challenges to reach the top. Here's an example of that framework. When I started, I wanted to build a business that let me work from home and be present for my kids. But I had no audience, no niche, and zero clue how to get clients. I launched, failed, rebranded, and tested again. And finally, I found my system. Today, I help other women do the same without wasting months figuring it out the hard way. Why this framework works. It builds momentum and mirrors real-life progress, the struggle to success. In the mountain framework, you walk your viewer through the climb. You had a goal, but it wasn't easy. There were obstacles and moments of doubts, maybe even failure, but you kept going and you made it. This is the earned success framework. It's great for personal stories, case studies, or anything where grit is part of the appeal. Framework number 5 is the Pixar formula. You'll use this one for relatable brand storytelling, educational content. Here's the structure. Once upon a time, then every day, until one day, and then because of that, and then because of that, until finally, and ever since then. So why this one works? It's human, it's emotional, and it has a natural narrative flow. Here's an example of the Pixar storytelling framework. I used to be a content creator working around the clock. Every day I'd post, hope for traction, and burn out by Friday. Until one day I realized I could repurpose one long form video into a week of content. Because of that, I stopped creating daily from scratch. Because of that, I started attracting leads on autopilot. Until finally, I had a system that worked without draining me. And ever since then, I've been teaching others how to do it too. Here's why this framework works. It's human, it's emotional, and it has a natural narrative flow. Framework number 6, the Freytag Pyramid. Use this one for long form videos or deep dives. Here's the structure: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Here's why it works. It's great for dramatic tension and storytelling arcs, especially if you're educating or narrating. Here's an example. In January this year, I decided to run a live workshop with zero ad spend and a tiny list. The plan was to deliver so much value that people couldn't help but buy. Signups were slow at first. I panicked. Mid-launch, I nearly canceled, but I leaned into email storytelling, showed up with value, and ended up making $5K in 5 days, a 300-person list. It wasn't perfect, but the experience was a turning point in how I sell. Here's why this framework works. It's great for dramatic tension and storytelling arcs, especially if you're educating or narrating. Framework number 7, day in the life or transformation story. You'll want to use this one for testimonials, vlogs, or lifestyle brand content. Here's the structure. Show a day before versus day after, or before versus after using the product. Here's an example. A client of mine used to spend her entire weekend writing Instagram content, but now she records one 10-minute YouTube video on Monday. We repurpose it and she's visible on 5 platforms with less stress. That's the difference a content system makes, and it's totally doable. Here's why this framework works. It's visual, relatable, and it shows change in a real grounded way. The day in the life or transformation framework You're showing what life looks like before someone discovers your offer and what changes after. It works really well in testimonial style videos or product demos. Storytelling framework number 8, the messy middle story. Use this one for humanizing your brand or sharing founder stories. Here's the structure. Start with a relatable moment. You want to show how things went wrong and then share what you learned and how you came out stronger. Here's an example of that framework. There was a point when I had no clients, no strategy, and no income, just the vision board and a whole lot of anxiety. I tried doing everything. I saw online reels, lives, cold DMs, and nothing stuck. What finally changed was simplifying it, choosing one core offer, one core traffic channel, and one nurture system. Every setback built the version of me that could handle success. Here's why this framework works. It builds trust through vulnerability and growth. The messy middle framework works because not every story is polished, and that's why this one lands. You share a moment where things didn't go as planned. Maybe you failed, made the wrong move, or felt like giving up. Then you show how you worked through it, what you learned, and what came out on the other side. This kind of vulnerability builds trust and positions you as someone who gets it, not someone selling something. Framework number 9, the us against them framework. Here's where the emotions ramp up. The best storytellers introduce an enemy. And do you want to know who are masters at this? If you've ever been sucked into the news, whether on the left or on the right, and you feel anger towards a group, it's this framework being used all the time. And no, it doesn't have to be a person. Your they can be the algorithm, the industry rules, the limiting beliefs in your own head, or the old school system that keeps people broke. Once you identify the enemy, you give it a voice. For example, they want you to play small. They told you this couldn't work. They said you had to have a big following before you can make money. So what happens next? Your audience feels it. They unite against that enemy. They get fired up, and then they start seeing you as the person leading them out of that struggle. And then finally, you land a memorable quote. Your memorable quote can be short and rhythmic. Here are a couple of examples. When the story clicks, the sell sticks. Or another one, if they say no, we say go. Rhyme and rhythm make it stick. These one-liners become repeatable phrases that your audience quotes, shares, and remembers. So all of these frameworks, these are how you're going to build that emotional momentum that trigger buying, and most importantly, that move people. Because whether someone buys or not, when you tell stories like this, they walk away changed. They remember you. They feel something, and that's what sticks. If you're ready to go deeper and start using these storytelling frameworks in your own content, I've put together the free resource for you. You can download it using the link in the description box below. If you found the video helpful, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.